Hello, Secret Keepers. The year is 2015. TikTok is still a twinkle in Musical Lee's eyes. The word Swiftie is entering the popular lexicon. A dress has the world questioning the reality of perception, and today's guest, Renee Gittins, had an idea for a game. This idea would become the cozy adventure Potions, A Curious Tale. And today we are going to talk to Renee about where 9 years of hard work and ambition will get you. That and so much more on today's episode of the Moth Studios Super Secret Podcast. Shh. Here's some cozy ASMR to set the mood. Chocolate. Gumdrop. Beluga. Welcome back, Secret Keepers. I'm your host, water-chugging champion, Joel Watts, joined as always by...
Danny, never not impressed by your odd brand of braggadocio.
And today, we are joined by Renee Gittins of Stumbling Cat Games and the maker of Potions, A Curious Tale. Renee, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Really pleased to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're pleased to have you. And today, we're going to talk to Renee about making her game, Potions, A Curious Tale, out on Steam now, and what you can do when bigger names try to elbow you out of the conversation. But first, let's get to the question of the week. So we're going to get more into what cozy games means to you, Renee, but I figured since we're going to get to know so much about what you find to be cozy, maybe we should spend some time defining what you find to be the right kind of chaotic and intense, those sort of vibes that you're happy to sign up for. Sort of like jumping out of an airplane or a mosh pit at a concert. What sort of intensity do you invite into your life?
Oh gosh, I'm a workaholic. I don't know if that counts.
I think it does, because work is chaos. Work is like, kind of burns you always. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a workaholic. I also, I think people find it very interesting how I travel. So I travel a lot for work. And when I travel for work and for fun, I basically backpack. So I only pack a single backpack of stuff, even if I'm, going to be in Europe for 3 weeks. And then I book as little things as possible, but do as much research as possible. So I will categorize my notes by like country or neighborhood, and then just sort of go where I feel based on the day. So I do like heavy planning or pre-planning, but no actual scheduling, unless there's something like going to Universal Japan or, something where you have to sign up months ahead of time.
Oh, you have to sign up months ahead of time to go to Universal Japan?
I know you do for the Studio Ghibli Museum.
Oh,
I
okay.
think you might have to for Universal Japan since they opened Nintendo World, because that's been very popular.
Yes. The place everybody wants to be. I want to be there so bad. I can't wait to, Danny always says we should be going to Antarctica on our adventures, but I'm like, Universal Studios Japan. Go, collect some coins.
Exactly.
After you survive Antarctica.
Okay, so it's my little treat to get through Antarctica. I gotcha.
Yeah, if you survive Antarctica, we'll do Nintendo World.
Okay. So traveling is and work are sort of the chaoses that you let in your life that you need to then wind down with coziness.
Yeah, I would say that those are my two main stressors. I would say that work is more of a stressor than travel, but certainly I travel full speed. I need almost a rest from travel when I get back.
Oh, okay. So you intense traveling. See, Danny, you should be making the travel show with her, or she should be our guide on the travel show.
There we go.
Awesome.
How do you feel about walking from the North Pole to the South Pole? Does that interest you?
No.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Joel. It's going to be a small party.
I
Small
love
party.
hiking. I love cultural explorations. I don't love all of the nothingness that would be as part of that journey. So that would be not up my alley.
You definitely want to have fast travel at certain points of those kinds of journeys.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Danny, do you have what kind of chaos do you gladly invite into your life?
Aside from my children, I would say conventions. Cons are kind of chaotic. I'd say that's a high energy environment. I think there might even be a con in our near future. One might even say Comicpalooza is that con.
Yeah.
And I feel like we would be remiss if we went more than 10 minutes into an episode without mentioning Comicpalooza. So here we are.
Yes, folks. And we actually do have an announcement. Let's save it for the end of the show, but we got some details about our Comicpalooza appearance. So we'll get to that here at the end. I do agree, though. Cons, Renee, you've been to cons for video games, I presume. You were talking about the light setups that you bring with you.
Yeah, so I've been going to conventions for most of my life now. I've been demoing at cons for the last 9 years, actually longer than that. But I also was a really big cosplayer back in the day, so I started going to anime conventions when I was 14 years old.
Nice.
Love it.
Well, just curious, what were some of your characters?
Let's see. I've done Ferris from Final Fantasy V. That's probably the least recognized costume, but it was my first one. I'm old enough that I did Ino from Naruto. I did Haruko from Furikuri. I did Alexstrasza from World of Warcraft. I did a Baneling from StarCraft. What else have I done? Yeah, a Jedi.
I honestly thought you were going to say
Nidalee from
Ferris
League of
Bueller.
Legends. Yeah, Nidalee and Talon from League of Legends.
Oh, wow. That's quite a list. And I'm sure all of those were an intense process, and maybe a chaotic process to put together.
Yeah. Actually, I got my degree in engineering with a focus in mechanical engineering. So despite sitting in front of a computer, I like doing lots of hands-on crafts and projects.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I totally feel you there. The hands, this is what's gratifying to work with.
Absolutely.
I guess to answer the question for myself, I mean, the main chaos, I don't have a great answer for this. I do kind of avoid chaos in general. I would say the stress of gameplay is where I probably get my most enjoyment. It's like that, that feeling of everything could go wrong, but it's still safe around me. But that just bubbling up, I could win everything or lose everything on this play. So that's probably what I would say.
We'll have to work on that. We can get some more chaos in your life.
Well, Danny, I think with your help, we will probably have plenty more of that to come. And also, audience at home, please don't keep your answer a secret. Let us know in the comments, what chaos do you seek out in your life? And while you're at it, like and subscribe. Danny says if we hit 100 subscribers, Joel will have his arms surgically switched.
Yep, left to right. Just switch them around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, if you want to see that, go ahead and subscribe. We are only 17 more away from my count to hitting that 100 subscriber mark. Ever dreamed of embarking on legendary quest, unlocking hidden secrets, and discovering untold riches? Dive into the world of X Seekers of Fortune. It's the game that's soon to be taking the internet by storm. Sign up today at xseekersoffortune.com and start your journey to greatness. Remember, fortune favors the bold. See you there. Why don't we get started with where we always love to start our conversations, and that's the origin story of you as a gamer. So, Renee, did you grow up in a gaming household?
Yes. I was first introduced to video games through my father playing games.
Okay.
I'm an only child, so sort of my only opportunity to be initially introduced to games was through my parents. My dad was really big into first-person shooters, so my first games I were exposed to in order were Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, and then Pokemon Yellow. So that's how I started things off.
That's a nice ramp up.
Yeah, that's a lot of Nazi killing and a lot of demon slaying in your past. Huh?
One of my memories is asking my dad why you gave the dancing ladies money.
I'm just curious. Did you know why he gave the dancing ladies money? You just
No,
wanted to hear him
I
say
had no
it.
clue.
Okay.
I was 5 or 6. I had no clue why you gave the dancing ladies money. Just knew there was, if you use the interact button next to the dancing ladies, you go, oh yeah, you hand them money. And I just I didn't understand. Why do you give dancing people money? Don't you dance for fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time, one is often dancing for fun. I just asked that because I know a few times when I was a kid, I was trolling my teachers and parents, but I would ask questions, uncomfortable questions that I already knew the answer to. I just wanted to get their response. So, but okay. So that tells me you are in a PC household with a little bit of Nintendo. Is that correct? You're a PC gamer?
That is correct. I'm a PC gamer.
Oh man, I am envious of you growing up with a PC in your house like that. Especially Doom. I feel like I missed the Doom train. I really have to go back and sit down and actually play it. But by the time I had a PC, Doom was sort of like, in that awkward space between being the hottest thing ever and being a legacy game that
Right.
everybody should play, where it's just kind of like, that was old news, I totally get that. So did Pokemon, so you went first person shooter, Pokemon. How did that expand your understanding of what games could be?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming from first-person shooters, you're not used to dealing with many systems other than different weapon systems and like basic health. Learning a more expansive inventory system, like strategy beyond go left, right, shoot things, was definitely fun. And I mean, like, I was born in '90, so like I was the perfect age for Pokemon and being really excited about the show and cards. So it was another way to engage with an IP that I had already fallen in love with.
Oh, okay. So you had seen the show, you had seen the card game around, and then you got the Game Boy game. Well,
Yeah. My parents got me the Pokemon Yellow and a Game Boy at the same time.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Pokemon?
Ooh, that's hard. Mew is definitely one of my favorites.
Ooh,
So I would probably
okay.
say Mew, particularly of the 151, the Gen 1. If you expand to Gen 2, I'm also relatively fond of Umbreon. And actually, there's an Umbreon in a teacup right there.
Aw.
And there's a Dragonair. Do you have any other Pokemon? Those are my only Pokemon right now.
Nice. And that I had the same thing basically happen. Granted, I think it was either Pokemon Red or Blue, but I got a Game Boy specifically to play Pokemon. So I'm definitely right there with you. Awesome.
It's a good device, and like there is something special about having like a really crappy Wormalite and hiding under your covers, like breathing intensely as if your parents could hear you all the way down the hall while you like play Pokemon way past your bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. It was a wonderful, I have my personal little device here. I can go to my room and play. I don't have to, as a one of three children and the older brother, it's like, anytime that it's like, I don't have to share this. We don't have to play together.
Yeah.
Right.
And a time before backlit devices. I mean, having to have the external light, that's such a core memory of growing up. Did you ever play with the Sega Game Gear? Those things were battery killers.
I did not.
It was not nearly as, I mean, it was cool that it was full color and lit, but man, I felt like it was like 20 minutes. It would burn through 8 batteries. Like, I don't think that's a super exaggeration.
No, it was, I got my hand on it a few times. I think I went over to a friend's house. They had a Game Gear and they were almost annoyed that I wanted to see it, because they knew that it's like, oh, we're going to get batteries out and he's going to play 10 minutes and it's going to be, it definitely, it shows you sometimes you want to be behind on the technological push because the Game Boy was so much more useful, even though it had no color, no backlight, nothing like that. It was just Game Boy lasted nearly a decade, being a mainstay of handheld gaming.
Yeah.
So like I said, Pokemon probably expanded your appreciation for what a game could be past the first person, point and click and kill. You can actually create, develop relationships with, these animals and, still going out and fighting, but you're just knocking them out. I usually like to ask, because I had a very specific answer with movies, but was there a game that made you realize that games could be so much more and perhaps something that you yourself wanted to craft?
Yeah. So I'll admit I didn't know I could make video games really until college. So that didn't happen to me quite late. But what completely changed how I thought about video games was actually my 5th video game, which is Half-Life.
Oh, that's a great combination of those two because Half-Life is a still first-person shooter, but I mean, not to be down on Doom or Duke Nukem, but I think Half-Life was one of the first cinematic first-person shooters in the sense that like it told the story with the language of video games.
Absolutely. The world in there, it feels like you are actually a scientist in that world. And the fact that the tutorial is going through this experiment that sets off the rest of the events in the game, it just does such a good job of immersive storytelling and world building.
Yeah. No, it was that opening sequence of Half-Life, I think, changed video games. It's like one of those moments. It's like there's everything before the opening of Half-Life and there's everything after Half-Life.
Yep.
Yeah. Just curious. You mentioned 4 first-person shooters at this point. Did you while being in your video game creation, have you ever had the desire to make your own first-person shooter, or is that kind of a genre that you love to play but couldn't see yourself like developing?
Yeah, I couldn't necessarily see myself developing one. Okay. Maybe the right one with the right approach, but it would be pretty esoteric, I think. Yeah, like I love like some looter shooters. The Borderlands series is also something that's really close to my heart. And if I was to create something, it would probably be more along those lines, where it's really like story heavy, world building heavy, because that's actually what I find most compelling about video games. My initial foray into first person shooters was a lot because that was what was accessible to me, and I still enjoy first person shooters, but I'm much more drawn to like high fantasy action adventure type games.
Yeah, totally. And those tend to be more like, I guess you can play Skyrim in first person mode, but more often than not, they pull the camera out to like a third person perspective. And
do you not play Skyrim in first person mode?
I'm saying, well, you can. I'll admit now, I'm not a Skyrim player, but I am aware of, the Bethesda, oeuvre, and they usually play in first person on those games, right? But but I'm saying that's more of an exception than the rule. I mean, like, most fantasy games are like RPGs or adventures, and and secondly, it's they usually have like a third person camera.
Yeah, that's true. I would say that the first one of those that I got to play and really enjoyed was Fable. Which was a third-person camera.
I loved Fable, though that could be its own diatribe about Fable, like what Fable could have been, what they advertised Fable to be. That's its own thing.
It's fine. I was young enough that I didn't have like the super hype train. Like I was just like, this sounds like a cool game, and I played it, and it was a cool game that I liked. So there was no room for disappointment because I had no expectations.
I was just old enough, like I think I'm about 4 years older than you, so I was just old enough to be on the hype train, reading the articles and everything like that. But it still turned out to be a fun game, and I enjoyed myself. So that's neither here nor there. I do want to ask really quick though, because I watched some of your older vlogs, and a lot of them featured a Legend of Zelda Skyward Swords poster in the background. Very cool. I wanted to know, what is your favorite Legend of Zelda game?
A Link Between Worlds.
Oh, good. That's an interesting. I have to admit, I haven't got into A Link Between Worlds, but that is an interesting pick. That was the Game Boy the 3DS, like
it is.
Sequel to A Link Between Time, or what?
A Link to the Past.
A Link to the Past. Thank you. Wow, that is a really cool answer, and it definitely reminds me that I need to go back and play that one.
It's really good.
What about it made it your favorite?
I just love the puzzles. Actually, if you look at the puzzles in Potions of Curious Tale, you'll see that a lot of them are very similar to like the top-down Zelda style puzzles. And I think that A Link Between Worlds is the most like mature approach to that world building and puzzles in the Zelda series. Yeah,
that's actually, now that you mention it, for some reason when I was playing Potions of Curious Tale, I was getting Secret of Mana vibes. But now that you mention it, it does have that same top-down perspective. Maybe it's because you start in a town, and Zelda rarely starts in a town. But yeah, now that you mention it, it has a very similar vibe.
Though I will note, I actually didn't play any of the Zelda games until after I had already started Potions of Curious Tale's development.
Really?
Yeah, I never got them as a kid, so okay. I only got them later.
So was that Skyward Sword poster, was that your first Zelda then, the Skyward Swords?
I had gotten it for my partner at the time. That was actually before I had played Skyward Sword.
Okay, we'll keep that a secret.
Super secret.
I don't care. What is someone going to do? Try to take away my gamer credit?
Yeah. Well, they'll try, but they don't succeed. I mean, they're going to come after me for not playing Skyrim, right?
And me for not knowing anything about Half-Life.
But you did a great job pretending not to know something about Half-Life. So education. So yeah, I wanted to ask you before we get into, because we're going to probably spend most of our time talking about Potions: A Curious Tale, because I really want to know your tale of making it. But let's go ahead and do a little bit of table setting of where you were, like, I guess, like, as you're entering adulthood, you're going to secondary, secondary education, college and everything like that. What became between, what was the journey like to get to the point where you were like, I can make a game, I have a game idea, and I want to make it?
Yeah. So I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are swayed by passions and interests and skills. I did basically equally well. I was valedictorian, so I just got A's in everything. And so I didn't have like any strong, oh, I'm really good at science or I'm really good at art. I was just like, I can do anything, I guess. I don't know what I want to do. My uncle and my cousin were both engineers. And I was like, well, I like problem solving and I like working with my hands. So I guess I will be a mechanical engineer. Or my actual goal was to be a biomechanical engineer, so doing prosthetics. And so
that's cool.
That's what I went to school for. I remember the start of my sophomore year. I was thinking, man, I really think programming is neat. Maybe I should switch to a computer science degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, man, like computer scientists get paid a lot, which is fine, but I don't even need to make that much money. And like, I don't want to be in front of a computer all day. Like that sounds really taxing.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided not to change my major. 2 years later, I met a bunch of game developers.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly people at Rioters, because I had been such a large League of Legends fan, and my school was actually relatively close to Riot. So I made a bunch of friends at Riot. I was invited to tour the studio. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I could be a game developer. And game developers are like me. I could do this. Of course, I was already almost 4 years into my degree, about to graduate as an engineer with a focus in mechanical engineering and project management. So I knew that would be a really tough transition. So I started in biotech, taught myself programming, and then switched over to games.
Okay. That is amazing. And it is so interesting. Like, if you could go back at our age now and tell 19, 20, 21-year-old versions of us, it's like you have the time to change your life. It wouldn't seem nearly as daunting, from us where we're sitting now. It's like if I don't know, if I had done the same thing, learned to program a computer at 21, at the time I'd probably been like, oh, I've already missed my opportunity. I've missed my window. But when you're, my age, and looking back at 21, you're like, oh, you still have plenty of time ahead of you. You could have spent the next 5 years learning that and gotten good.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons that I didn't change my major to computer science is that everybody in the computer science program had been programming since high school. So I was like, I guess I already missed the train as a sophomore in college because everybody else knows how to program.
Yeah, it's such a fallacy in our head, and then it's like by that logic, Danny and I wouldn't be game designers because we had never designed a game until just 2 years ago. Well, not
what did you mentioned being valedictorian in high school? Did you feel any kind of pressure about not knowing how you wanted to spend your life? How did you think about it at that point in your life, not having a clear idea of what you wanted your career to be?
No, I didn't really feel super strong pressure. I mean, I tried to make an informed decision, and I made it through logic and slight interest, but I wouldn't say passion. And I'd actually considered getting my degree in biology because I was very interested in biology and maybe going to genetic engineering. But I realized lab time is really boring and poorly paid. So I was like, I guess, mechanical engineering, biomechanical engineering is sort of a good middle ground there. You get compensated decently for it. I still get to do hands-on stuff. It's problem solving. It's kind of biotechnology. So.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always been a good researcher? Has that just been something that's always been with you, or is that a skill you had to develop?
It is hard to say. I I imagine it is a skill I had to develop. I just don't recall developing it. If that makes sense, right? Like, you're a kid with the internet. Like, eventually you figure out how to Google more things as there are more things to Google, right? You know, I must have been like 11 or 12 before I got dial-up internet at home, but I was mucking around with the computers at the library several times a week in the end of elementary school.
Was the internet super? I mean, I assume for everyone in our generation, for the most part, it was super formative for us. And do you have a lot of? Do you look back at your early years on the internet and see evidence of the person you would grow into, or?
Absolutely. Actually, probably what not a lot of people expect is I was a total like black sheep when it came to my peers. I did not get along well with other people my age. My social skills were not the best. And I think part of that is because I have much older parents. My dad was like 45 when I was born.
Oh, wow.
And I was an only child. And I spent a lot of time with my parents. So most of my interactions were with older adults. And so there's like both a generation gap between my parents and my peers' parents.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any siblings. There were no kids in my neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time with adults and not a lot of time with other kids my age. And like, I think there was just ended up being like this huge disconnect. So when I got picked on and bullied, I'd also, my parents met through martial arts. So I definitely was like, you bully me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you sort of kid, which is not great for like forming early relationships in elementary school. Anyway, I ended up finding the internet and spending a lot of time in chat rooms and forums and MMOs. And so actually I developed a lot of my social skills online. Because it was a place where I could safely develop those social skills without dealing with like the previous bullying history that I had dealt with.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, for better or worse, I mean, you know, like a light razzing, you know, that's sort of like a way that people, like young kids, can interact. I mean, hell, like, you know, adults even do that. Well, they'll razz each other in order to start to create that bond. I'm not sure if these were like how serious of bullies these are, but if you don't understand that though, through not having siblings or not having, you know, young enough parents, you know, I could see how that could be like, oh, you're razzing me, I'm going to go hard and say, get out of my face. And then it's just like, oh, we can't really, that interaction doesn't work with this person over here, so we'll leave them alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did the bullying got a lot more intense with time. I think everybody gets bullied the most in middle school. So I was dealing with pretty bad stuff in middle school.
The worst time in anybody's life.
Yeah. I did end up making a decent amount of friends in later elementary school by staying in at recess and playing Magic the Gathering with some of the guys. So, yeah.
Magic.
What is your magic color identity?
I have a white-green tribal cat deck as my commander deck.
Love it.
And I use Arabo, Roar of the World, the Secret Lair edition, which is a Maine Coon cat, and my beloved cat. It was a Maine Coon. He passed away earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry.
I believe we saw that cat featuring in your live action trailer that we'll see later. But
that was his last week with us. That's why I made sure to have him in there.
I understand. I'm a new cat owner myself. Winston is only been with me a year, basically coming up soon, and I can only imagine how rough that is to for them to pass away. Have you gotten a new cat since then? Or are you taking some time?
I have not, but I am going to probably start looking in June.
Okay.
So he passed a month, like almost exactly a month before my games ship. So it was like February 5th, 6th, around there.
I see. I meant to ask. Oh, sorry. I meant to ask the question: the industrial design engineering that you did. What skills from that career path did carry over to you making your own game, and what did you like? Where did you lean in to that knowledge base first and foremost? In the transition,
I think it's just general problem solving skills. So logic's logic when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And I do think the skills I learned around like proper documentation was also really helpful. But I can't say that, too much of the deep mechanical engineering stuff was too useful. It was just the process, right? The process of taking a problem, breaking it down into components, solving for each of those components, and putting it back together. Even though the way that you solve things in code or game design is quite different than mechanical engineering, the process of breaking problems down and building them back together as a solution is very similar.
I think you've preached that quite a bit in your TikToks and the various vlogs, and that's definitely like what keeps Danny and I going with our game design as well. Is like just every time we come up to a problem, just bring it down to like the core, break it up into multiple pieces. It's great advice, and I'm sure project management helped, with that.
Absolutely.
Love it. I wanted to ask you about Forbes 30 Under 30. How was that? Did you know you were nominated for that? And what was that like for you to be named to that list? And how has it impacted you since?
Yeah, so I was aware that I was nominated because they reached out to me to ask additional questions. So prior to the announcement of the 2020 list of Forbes 30 Under 30 class, I guess, they reached out to me to ask me a few things about the things I had done in the industry, my current role, and stuff like that. I would say at the point I was named on the list, it didn't have a huge impact because one of the reasons I was named on the list was for all the work I was doing as the executive director of the IGDA, which is a very public-facing role within the games industry. So I was pretty much already getting a lot of coverage or like attention as an expert within the games industry when that list was announced. The people I think if it had happened like 2 years earlier, it would have had much of a larger effect. But at that time, I was already quite established.
It was more of like a, like the acknowledgement of the work you had done and the impact you had made than it was like a announcement of you're a new talent in town.
Yeah, it's definitely an acknowledgement of people's achievements, less so than like a rising stars kind of acknowledgement.
Okay.
How do you view your time at the IGDA?
Effective, I think. Stressful as well.
What do you view as your... Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, so many people had helped me throughout my career and contributed knowledge and time and just friendliness, which helped me with my success, that I really wanted to give back to the games industry. And I did that through volunteering for the IGDA for 6 years prior to being named the executive director. And when I was sort of given the keys to the car as being the executive director, I wanted to ensure that I was setting the organization up for as much long-term success as possible. And so I focused initially on a bunch of stuff that nobody would see. I focused on internal operations, making everything work smoothly like a fine-tuned machine, which gave us a lot more overhead space in order to spin up programs and support and resources for game developers. And then 6 months after that, I did that for about 6 months, and then I did our 2020 plans. And then COVID hit and ruined everything. But because of that previous work I had done to reduce our operation overhead, it allowed us the flexibility to put on a conference with like 2-week notice. So we put on the Game Developer Crisis Conference at the start of April 2020, which was a free online conference that focused on providing resources and information to game developers about how to successfully operate during the pandemic. So it was about the technical aspects of developing remotely, including like build systems, hooking into consoles, like all the super technical stuff. was about mental health support of
Oh.
yourself and of your team, of team management remotely, of community management and helping your community that's going through crisis. So it had like a wealth of really great free information that was all tailored to specifically the pandemic. And at that time, we didn't know it would be going on for like another year and a half, 2 years after that point.
Yeah.
So I think it was very timely, and it was great that we were able to provide those resources.
Yeah.
What do you view as being the pandemic's legacy in game development? Like, how do you see the lasting impact of that period of our lives impacting game development as a
I, for the most part, see it as
institution?
quite positive. I think that it forced a lot of companies to have remote access to development tools, as well as a lot of platforms to reduce the restrictions on remote development as well, which is beneficial for teams, not just to support remote workers, but to support in-office workers who might need to pick up a package or are feeling sick and still want to work but don't want to bring diseases into the workplace. Like, I think it is overall healthy for us. And also, it allowed far greater accessibility to game development content and knowledge. A lot of people who couldn't travel for game conferences to listen to these wonderful talks and connect with people suddenly found all these game conferences being hosted online, and they could just join virtually, which like really, really helped uplift like the knowledge of game development across the globe, and give a lot of access to people who previously hadn't been able to get to that content and networks and opportunities.
Yeah.
It also, of course, changed how people viewed games, right? Like, it was really easy to previously say, oh, games are just for kids, or games aren't healthy. But when you're stuck inside all day, it turns out that they are a healthy, positive activity. And that not only improved the view of video games, but it also increased the reach of video games. It brought many, many more people, like Among Us. How many people's first game was Among Us? Probably a lot, a lot more than we'd expect. And I think that was really healthy for just the growth of our audience.
Yeah.
I will say the negative side of the pandemic, I think, is what we're facing right now, layoffs. And I don't think that is a direct cause by the pandemic, but I think that the pandemic caused such rapid growth that a lot of companies felt the need to expand. And as they expanded, they assumed that rapid growth would continue at the same rate it did. And that's just not how the economy works.
No.
And so when that slowed down, a lot of companies found out that they had overexpanded.
Yeah.
There are many other reasons as well. I don't want to get too much into it, but that's one of the reasons why we've seen such extreme layoffs recently.
Wow. It is a good thing. I mean, like, that's an interesting take on the pandemic that, sometimes an industry has to slow down, almost has to come to a halt and face problems they haven't faced before in order to grow and expand in positive ways. So, I often think every setback is actually just a chance to restructure, and tackle a new set of problems and make your foundation even stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but during all of this, through the pandemic, through being the industrial designer, through being on Forbes 30 for 30, you at some point, and I want to get to the bottom of this because it's so wonderful, you at some point had an idea for a video game that would become Potions: A Curious Tale. According to the vlog I watched, you started this game, according to YouTube, you posted a vlog about this 9 years ago. So what was that, I guess, seed of an idea that came to you, and how did you first start working on it?
Yeah. So what happened was, as I was leaving biotech and attempting to enter the games industry full time, I had done both production and server development within games. I had done software development and worked on some mini games in biotech. And I wanted to figure out what I even wanted to do in the games industry. I was looking at 3 paths. I was looking at potentially just being an engineer, like a gameplay engineer. I had done some work on that. I was looking at being a producer. I had done some work as a producer and was confident in my ability there. And I was considering if I wanted to be a game designer.
Okay.
But I had never designed a game before. So that felt like a career path I should try to check out more before deciding whether or not I wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did to evaluate that was I was like, well, I should design a game. So I sat down with a piece of paper and a pen and was thinking, okay, what type of game do I want to make? And apparently I design out of frustration. So I had 2 points of frustration I wanted to address.
Okay.
One was I was playing this mobile game called 8-Bit Dungeon. I don't know if you've played it. It's a dungeon diving game. You have food, and so if you can starve to death, you get hearts, and you have to kill creatures, and you get experience and level up. And your goal is to dive as deep into the dungeon as possible. However, as you move around, you consume food and can potentially starve to death. And you need to kill every monster on the level in order to get enough experience to level up enough to kill the boss monsters that are every like 5 or 10 levels.
Okay.
Which means if you find the stairs down to the next level early, it is bad. And it's a waste of resources, and it's like the worst thing that can happen. And I was like, wow, this really sucks. If I find the stairs early, I want to be like, yeah, like totally half skip the level, like feels great, and not like, oh no, I'm gonna like waste a bunch of resources and might starve to death because I found the exit early. And so I was like, well, that sucks. I don't want a game to feel that way. I don't want it to be, I want you to feel rewarded for discovering things early. And then the other thing that bothered me, sort of related, is that in so many games, many action adventure games, you are told you're a hero. You are a hero. You're like the coolest person. You're going to save the world.
Yeah.
And if you slaughter every wildlife creature you come across, it is beneficial, which seems kind of psychopathic.
Yes.
And like, I was like, man, that really sucks. Like, I hate that. It just feels necessary almost. Like you're leaving things on the table. If you don't just kill everything you come across, whether or not it's being aggressive towards you. And so I was like, okay, these are the 2 things I want to address in my game design. And that's where I was like, okay, the only way that I can see this working is not like a morality or karma system, because that's really contrived and forced. I wanted it to be the player's choice whether or not to be aggressive and then to discover things. And so that's where the potion system came from, because every aggressive action you take consumes resources, so it is costly to do that. There is no auto attack. You can't just like whack everything with your sword until it's dead. Like you have to make a judgment and like, is killing this fluffy bunny worth my resources? Or if I don't need a rabbit's foot, it's the bunny's lucky day and it gets to live until I need a rabbit foot, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing is I wanted to have an experiment system. So like you can experiment and figure out new potions before you are just like in the story given them. And that feels rewarding because when you discover something new early, it's beneficial for you. You can like unlock secret areas ahead of time. It's like good to experiment and like get ahead of the story. And so those are the 2 main influences to creating Potions: A Curious Tale. And at the time, I decided to build out Potions once I learned about Unity as a pure portfolio piece. It was never intended to be a commercial product. It was just intended to sit on a website so I could tell people about it and convince them to hire me.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I mean, how probably a similar thing happened to Danny and I with our game development. It's like, you know, I went into it being like, well, if we could get it far enough to have like a prototype that we could show up to our families and friends, maybe they'll believe in us the next time we have a game idea. But then, you know, it starts snowballing and all of a sudden you have like, oh no, this is the game that I have to make.
How did you know that it was going to become a commercial? Like, what was the moment where you're like, oh, this isn't a portfolio piece anymore. This is a commercial piece.
That sort of ramped up over time because I was attending a lot of game developer events and conventions and just trying to network, which is also very important for getting hired. And everybody remembered my game and kept asking about it, and they were really interested in it. So I was like, okay, you know, maybe maybe this is a good idea if so many people remember it and are interested and, are asking me about it like the first time they see me, like how it's going. So that's when I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot through Kickstarter. So I set up a Kickstarter campaign and let the public tell me if they were interested or not. And they were.
I think it really underscores your hypothesis about psychopathic behavior when we saw the release of Pal World, how many people just flocked to the game just to kill things.
Yeah. I can enslave Pokemon for hard labor. This is the best.
I was about to say that was the more disturbing part of it to me, was like, oh, you guys are just taking the subtext right out, putting it right, make it text. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I had a quick question, just to do a little bit of a nostalgia trip, because this was a long-term project that you've been working on. 9 years is a substantial amount of time. What has been the most surprising change to your world in the span of coming up with the idea and releasing the game? Or at least like what's a fun, positive, maybe change?
And by my world, you mean in potions or my?
Well, I actually wanted to start with your personal world, if you don't mind, and then I was going to ask you more about potions itself.
Oh, I certainly never expected to be a leader in my industry. I just I was an indie dev, mucking around with stuff. I never expected to be when I was at Phoenix Labs, I was running a studio of 155 people.
Oh wow. I was.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So I didn't expect that.
But that's.
I knew I had some leadership capabilities. I never thought I would be leading the IGDA or a AAA studio. So that was surprising, I would say. And I never expected to go super, super, super viral on TikTok.
You definitely have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get.
What was your favorite game you worked at Phoenix Labs?
So I was there. They've only released 2 games so far, which is Dauntless and Fae Farm. And Dauntless was significantly into its live. It had been out for years by the time that I had joined, and so certainly there were content patches, and I had a lot of fun seeing the development and helping the team. I was never directly developing any of these games. I was more helping the teams stay sane and providing them resources and such. So that was cool. But since I saw so much of the development of Fae Farm, I have a lot of affection for that. And I'm going to pull off my keycap. I have a little Mist Fairy keycap, which is from Fae Farm on my...
Gorgeous.
Let me see if I can.
On my keyboard.
Very cool. I need to get.
I'm getting vision vibes.
I need to get a special escape key for our game. That would be so cool. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I think I've played Dauntless. I haven't quite seen Fae Farm, so I'll have to look into that one too.
Fae Farm's very cozy.
Very cozy. Well, that brings me to.
I would say it's very cozy. But a lot of the combat designers were also Dauntless combat designers, so the dungeons can be surprisingly hardcore in terms of dodging and combat.
Sweet.
It's like Farmville on top, Dark Souls below.
Not quite that bad, but the statues make you feel that way.
Okay. So you brought up the term cozy right now, and I did want to ask you, because this is a recent term to come up, cozy game. I wanted to know what your definition of a cozy game is, so we can be on the same page moving forward.
I think it is a game that makes you have warm hug feelings, like drinking hot soup or having a tea in front of a fireplace, and I don't think that it has to be stressless. I think that some people define cozy games as completely lacking of stress. I think that it just has to have components that you find to be soothing or meditative.
Yeah.
You can find Minesweeper to be a cozy game, right? I think that is potentially cozy. Or you can find Minesweeper to be super stressful. I think that is an individual opinion. And that's actually been very interesting with Potions, because I think Potions is a cozy game. other people don't think Potions is a cozy game because it does have like combat and boss fights and some more stressful aspects to it.
I see. And that's like when a new term like this comes around, everybody's kind of arguing, well, is it in or is it out? People have their own opinions. I do agree with you though, because in my opinion about stress, because in my opinion, if a game doesn't have stress, I kind of think that's not a game. That's like an activity. Because if like cooking is cozy to many people, but you would say that cooking has stress involved. You have to be mindful of timers and, be constantly checking and stirring and, like juggling things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have this cozy game. When you started this game, I don't think the term cozy game was, out there. Is that something that was already in the game, and then all of a sudden there's this term out there that's called cozy gaming, you realize your game sort of fits into it? Or did you sort of, like, once you saw cozy games as being a thing that was, coming up, you sort of veered into making your game more of a cozy game?
So I would say that my game became more of a cozy game with time, but that was through playtesting and seeing the audience's responses to it. I was the first video game to ever demo at Geek Girl Con, which is a conference here in Seattle. Thank you. And I had just demoed Potions, an early version of it, at PAX Prime, now PAX West, prior to Geek Girl Con. And there was like some interest. The people were like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. Like, it's okay." And then I showed up at Geek Girl Con, and I was kind of expecting the same reaction, and instead, my booth got absolutely mobbed by girls.
Yes,
like 8 to 12-year-old girls were just like, "This is the coolest thing ever." One girl showed up dressed as a witch already, and just like pointed at the main character, and was like, "Look, Mom, it's me." Two parents came up and said, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much for being here. Our 8-year-old daughter is getting bullied in 2nd grade for liking Minecraft."
Oh.
Because her peers are saying that video games are for boys. So for you to be here with a game for her and to be a woman that she can look up to means absolutely so much to her. And at that point I was like, wow, I should make sure that this game is PG friendly, because I had not necessarily planned that at the time. Like, I love how dark and terrible fairy tales can be. And I had like been considering bringing those aspects, and I did not bring in as many of the dark aspects as I was originally planning, because I wanted to make sure that it was age appropriate for these girls who found a hero in Potions.
Yeah, it has a great aesthetic I enjoy the aesthetic as an adult male, but I think, it is also very attractive probably for a young girl to, the colors that you go into it, the illustration style, I think is very, in that terrain of like, storybook.
And very immersive, I think. Like, I feel like I was drawn in, from the very beginning, and I can imagine, especially like at that era of my life when I enjoyed playing Pokemon above everything else, like this game would have just pulled me in, and I would have wanted to live that witch life. So yeah, definitely a cool game. Did you ever say, hey, we need to make this more cozy, or is that not a comment behind the scenes?
No, at no point in time I was like, man, we really should make this game cozier. I mean, I had occasionally thought of something like, geez, people really seem to like farming. Do I want to have like some sort of like small garden aspect? Like you unlock behind Granny's house and it's actually a garden back there. And I was like, no. One of the pieces of advice I received early in my game development career was the best way to design a successful game is, once you've done your initial concepting of your idea, to write your elevator pitch. 2 or 3 sentences about what makes your game unique. It's genre, story, any interesting mechanics, and then to use that as your North Star and cut out anything that's not directly contributing to that. And so I cut out a lot of things that I considered initially. I had considered having a day-night cycle with like running a storefront, where you're like selling your potions. I had considered, the gardening aspects.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, Potions is an adventure crafting game where combat's not always the answer. And it means you need to spend a lot of your time in the world around combat and adventure and puzzle solving and exploration to meet that elevator pitch and that North Star.
Yeah, because I could see people like falling in love. Like if you were to have made the game bigger, I mean, granted, there are games out there that are way bigger than they have any right to be, but that's probably part of their elevator pitch. I think of the Yakuza series, where you can do anything and everything that you could do, like in a city, a downtown area, from playing darts to playing video games to, going out and drinking.
Giving the dancing girls money.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that. But that game was always meant to be everything you could. That was part of the elevator pitch. It's like everything you could do in a red light district in Tokyo. But I could see if you had put in a storefront or a garden, people wouldn't go on the adventure because they would just spend their entire time gardening. They would just turn it into a gardening simulator probably, and just craft potions, sell them at the storefront, and then that would be like the be all end all for them, and that's its own game.
Absolutely. One of the games that I've really loved is Reciteer, an item shop tale. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It is a game where you're basically playing as an item shop owner in sort of a JRPG world.
Yes.
And so it has a day-night cycle. You can go buy things from other storekeepers and sell them at your own store, set up your shop and deal with customers and haggling. And you can hire adventurers and go dungeon diving with them. And so the way I play Reciteer is I hire adventurers and do deep dungeon diving and pretty much make all my money off of loot I get. And a lot of other people only do the storefront aspect. And so I was thinking about that. Like, well, if I have that storefront aspect, and if you can ever make money without doing the dungeon diving and such, there's going to be people who won't do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to avoid that.
Yeah. And it also gives you something to say for the sequel. Your main character just, is expanding her life, and she wants to become an entrepreneur. Maybe that could be the sequel to the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just curious, like we keep hammering this, but it is the headline of the story: 9 years of development. How many major iterations of the game did you go through in that time?
The game actually hasn't changed very much. So because I had that elevator pitch as my North Star,
yeah,
I was building out systems initially. So I had an initial tutorial level that kind of really sucked, because it was one of those tutorial levels with like signposts, right? Like use WSD to move around, like right click to throw your potion, like those sorts of signs.
Yeah.
But I never thought that was actually going to be how the game started, right? It was intended to be sort of a throwaway level. And then after that, as I built out more systems, more like characters and story and stuff, I don't know how far you are, but I started the game tutorial, sort of like experience for demoing, after the initial tutorial of the game at like the first major non-tutorial quest, which is the Miss Muffet quest line for anybody who's played. And so it sort of had like an initial like really rapid tutorial, and then it moved you into the Miss Muffet quest line. And so I built out the game kind of from the early middle onwards. And again, I had been given the advice that the tutorial is the thing that you should build last.
Yes.
And so I kept the Miss Muffet quest line, but I took out the sort of stubbed in tutorial and then built the massive tutorial that you've been through, which hopefully does not feel like a tutorial, really, right?
I would say, okay, to give you an idea, I just met the old woman in was it the Baba Yaga?
You met Baba Yaga.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so
that's technically the end of the tutorial.
Okay, I would say that I didn't feel like I was still in a tutorial after I went to the farm. By the time I went to the farm, I thought I'm just playing the game.
Yeah, so the tutorial is actually going through and getting your broom, so because your broom is sort of like the last main feature. Oh. And when Baba Yaga meets you, she gives you your broom.
Oh yeah, and that definitely was like one of those exciting moments of like, oh, this game just opened up a lot. Like I need to go back to the farm because there's things I couldn't get before. I'm really excited to sit down and go to that next stage of the game. But well, you mentioned you had, and this is great advice. I just want to say that you got, and I think Danny and I might have intuited that because we recently looked at a much older version of our game and realized how much it still looked like our current game. Like it wasn't that different. So I think we've been also following that North Star of our elevator pitch. But I would like to, was there anything that did change in a major way from the original, along the way, like 5 years ago, did something come in that like, she's going to be, even if it's as simple as like, the character design has to completely change, or like my graphical system, like was there a major change like that along the way that defined the game that we're playing today?
Yeah, certainly the approach to the visuals for the levels changed. As well as there have been significant asset updates for characters and NPCs. We previously had a tile system, for a square tile system for our levels, and those tiles were quite busy. We actually toned down the busyness of the tiles and went to a hex system. The tile system had tiles that had out-of-bounds areas and tiles that didn't. The hex system had inbounds tiles, and out-of-bounds tiles were actually a lot easier to build out levels with, and gave a much more organic looking approach for like the forest. Turns out forests aren't square everywhere.
No.
And then I would say actually the largest change that the game has seen is I've redone the crafting system 3 times.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's always been combine 3 ingredients to get an item. It's just originally it was combine 3 specific ingredients. And it turns out that it means a lot of combinations fail when you do that. So if you have 20 items, and you're trying to find 100 recipes with a combination of those 20 items, 95% of those recipe combinations are going to fail. And that felt bad.
Yes.
And as soon as somebody was playing and they experimented and failed once, they stopped experimenting. So I redid the system to be element based. Like there are some recipes you have to have specific ingredients for, and you sort of get tricked into figuring that out. And after that, it's very element based, and that means if you only use 2 elements, and each ingredient can be only worth 2 mana, whether that's the same type of mana or different types of mana, then there's only like 105 combinations of potential recipes, or like 103. I forgot how many. Anyway, that is exactly how many recipes I made for that. And then I also built out some additional recipes so that if you're using a bunch of intro ingredients, you literally can never fail. So you can just, any combination of intro ingredients will always succeed. And then there are some of those unique recipes as well, so that they are harder to discover, so it feels more special when you do discover them.
And it's probably much.
So failure still exists, but you have to already be very invested in the game before you uncover. Fail cases.
Failure already exists, and if you listen to Granny's advice, you'll never fail. Her advice is don't combine more than 2 elements at once. I wonder if I should have her repeat that more, because I think people miss that a lot. But they start figuring it out. It becomes pretty self-evident as you continue to experiment. And in the most recent patch, I finally added the ability that it remembers failures. So it will tell you if the combination of ingredients that you're about to use will fail.
Oh, that's cool.
No, that makes a big difference. And, it actually helped me when I was doing the demo. I think I was trying to create the minor explosion potion, and I accidentally clicked on ash twice instead of a feather, and I made the potion, and it came out something different, and I was like, oh wait, I can just start throwing things together. It kind of opened up my eyes that was the way the game is meant to be played. So in a way, a mistake actually became like progression.
For some people, that's even more fun than knowing what they're doing. Like they just want to see what they can uncover, so that's cool.
As a Zelda Breath of the Wild fan, I'm always trying to defeat the dungeon in a way that isn't the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
Excellent. So you had, of course, yet again, 9 years of work working on this game. I'm guessing a little bit here and there as you went, or putting in a little bit of work consistently over these 9 years. But you get to the point where you're going to release the game. That must be a major milestone where you're now going to go in and choose a date for your game to be released. Now, before we get to the gritty part of the story, I did want to acknowledge, some of the nitty or the neat. You starred in a live action trailer for your own game, and it is really a good trailer. I just wanted to know, how did it feel to be part of that and play the character that you had been working on for so long?
Really cold. It was 21 degrees Fahrenheit that day, so you can't tell, but the ground's frozen solid, and like I had to use chemical hand warmers to like make sure that I could move my fingers because they were getting so cold that they were like stiffening.
Oh, no.
Oh wow. Production.
It was neat. Yeah, it was really cool. I didn't want to try to cut another gameplay trailer, and one of my friends had reached out and said, "Hey, I have some spare time. Is there anything I can do to help you with your game?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you interested in?" He's like, "Well, I just want to do what helps you." And I'm like, "Well, I know that you really like film and cinematography and you've bought fancy cameras. Do you want to do a live action trailer?" And he was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, that sounds like the coolest thing ever." And so he immediately, like, we went into storyboarding and came up with this trailer idea. And I wouldn't say that I was like, "Oh, I need to play the main character." It was more of a easy necessity, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, it's kind of hard to just find people to go parade around in a forest and make the costume, right? It was nice to have the model here to do all the measurements of and test things. So it was very cool to play Luna. I just really like how the trailer turned out. And I think a lot of people miss that it's me because with the purple wig and stuff, I look a bit different. But it was fun also getting the humor in there. I don't know if most people realize at the surface like how humorous a game Potions is. It is just like chock full of puns and references and like absolute absurd silliness. It was fun to be able to show that a little bit more with the live action trailer.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that because like a lot of the characters just say like really funny things throughout the game. They're every character, like especially the main characters that we've run into so far in the game, kind of take themselves a little too seriously. So which is like usually our go-to, Danny and I go to when we want to make fun of a character. It's like they're just a little too self-serious.
Everyone hates Emily when they first meet her.
Emily, yeah,
she's really mean.
I wanted to say, was Emily based on your experience with bullies? Because she definitely had mean girl energy right off the bat.
No, I don't want to spoil too much.
Okay.
But Emily is a character that is demonstrating empathy, that you don't know the situation a person is in, and as you advance the story, you sort of realize why she's acting that way. And as a young girl herself, you can understand, why she is being how she's being, why she's being mean, particularly into Luna.
Yeah, Emily definitely caught my attention, because of the meanness straight off the bat. So I'm looking forward to experiencing more of her story and seeing where that goes. All right, so, we didn't quite cover this, and I probably should have asked you about it a little bit earlier, but basically you said that this was meant to be a Potions, A Curious Tale was meant to be like a demonstration of your abilities, like kind of a sizzle reel for you as a game designer, but at some point you obviously, decided, hey, we're going to release this game. How recently was that you decided that it was going to actually be a game that was going to be publicly, commercially sold, and when did you start going through the process, all the, as Danny and I know, like, setting up a company and, filing, an LLC and all of that? How did, when did you decide to, just tackle that part of the process?
I'd actually set up the company before even figuring out the game.
Oh, okay.
So I did that from like a tax potential.
Okay.
Like I knew I wanted to work in games. I knew I maybe wanted to do my own games. It really helps to have a business in order to do contracting, consulting, and other types of income, as well as tax write-offs for expenses such as traveling to conferences. So I had spun that up before even trying to come up with my first game concept. Just seemed like a smart thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the business bank account came a little later, but once I was actually dealing with money. But yeah, I actually really got ahead of the ball on that one.
Excellent.
I decided I was going to at least give it a shot to be initial product, commercial product, when you saw that first video. So that first blog was when I said, like, I decided I'm going to make a game. Like, that is when I had decided I was going to give it a effort. But I was willing to stop if it seemed like a bad idea, right? Like, that's when I first attempted. By the time I went through the Kickstarter, I knew I was going to finish it at some point. And then when the Kickstarter was successful, I was like, there's no way I'm not shipping this. Because I promised a bunch of people I was going to. It took longer, obviously, than expected, but I wanted to bring them the game that I promised I would bring them.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So,
Go
ahead, Danny.
I was just going to ask, so what was the relationship like with your backers as you were on the back end of a successful campaign, needing to communicate changes to the timeline? What was that experience like?
There are some people who were supportive, and there are some people who made me never want to post Kickstarter updates, because anytime I did, it reminded them that I existed, and they would post really mean comments. Like, really.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I was accused of, like, stealing people's money. I was accused of, like, never trying to ship the game.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I had people saying they were going to, like, eat their bike if I ever shipped it. So I guess I should send that guy a napkin or something.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, you'll cross-post it on TikTok.
The funniest thing is none of the people who were posting the worst comments were significant backers. Like, all of them had, like, only really paid for, like, the base level of the game, or, like, maybe some digital stuff, but, like, none of them were my top backers. All of my top backers were, like, occasionally sending me, like, very nice and supportive messages. Yeah, I even tried to, like, refund somebody who had been very consistent about posting, like, really rude messages.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, like, I'll give you a refund, but you have to you can't force a refund on somebody through Kickstarter. They have to request it. So I was like, please request a refund. And they're like, no, I refuse. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks.
Haters going to hate.
Like, too much troll equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, looking forward to that. I mean, Danny and I think, are very much, like, nervous in their stomach about, like, we want to get our game out as quickly as possible. And granted, Kickstarter's changed in the last 9 years. With, like, back when you did Potions: A Curious Tale Kickstarter, that was, like, back in the Wild West of Kickstarter, where you could post, like, I have an idea for something. Now let's.
No.
Oh no, it wasn't. Okay, maybe I'm.
No,
wrong.
that was like 2012.
Oh, okay. So
was when they were doing really well. I did my Kickstarter in 2016, and it was already very, very reduced. Like, a lot of people had been burned by early video game Kickstarters. I think there was like a 85 or 95% fail rate on Kickstarter video games when I was shipping mine. So, yeah. I wish it was, like, easy money. It was not. I funded with 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
In my campaign.
Oh, wow.
So.
Yeah, it definitely is like it's a different. I guess it's a different beast, but even then, back at that point, that it is a world of difference of having a game ready to go versus, like, just needing to get the finances to make the game in the first place. So we are getting to the release of the game. First of all, how did you decide on the date that you were going to release?
I had been considering several different dates. I wanted to ensure that it was shortly after a Steam Next Fest. So I had originally been considering late 2023, but there was a lot of things going on in game media at that time, particularly Baldur's Gate and Starfield.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, screw this. I definitely should push it to next year. Steam Next Fest is in February. I don't want to do immediately after it, so I'm looking at March. Hey, March is Women's History Month and has International Women's Day. Wouldn't it be really cool to ship the game on International Women's Day?
Yeah.
I technically shipped the game in my time zone the day before International Women's Day because that's International Women's Day globally. Being in the Pacific time zone, I'm sort of like the end of the day.
Yeah.
And like, so I shipped it the day before because then it was still International Women's Day for Japan and like, you know, everywhere else, like people could purchase it on International Women's Day. And then, it would be out on International Women's Day for everyone. So that's why I picked that date.
Lovely. I didn't even realize that there was that was the reason behind it. And that is a wonderful idea. So it's International Women's Day this past year. Can you walk us through the date of the release and, how things played out?
Yeah, so I did all of this studying ever to ensure a successful release. I highly recommend How to Market a Game with regards to resources for that, both the online articles as well as their Discord community. So I ran my Steam page through them, my trailers, I got all sorts of feedback from them. And I was able to do research through those articles and find in order to have a successful release, you want to make sure that you're going into launch day with between 7,000 to 10,000 wish lists. Because if you go in with that many wish lists, you are likely to get enough sales to put you on the new and trending page. And the new and trending page is where you get a lot of initial views, attention, etc. Every day you're on new and trending should result in 1 to 2 million impressions, a few thousand wish lists, and hundreds to thousands of sales, which is huge for us as indie developers. So I had been doing really aggressive marketing. I had ensured that I was spending about half my time marketing and half my time developing, which was like 75 hours a week total. But, I was doing a lot of both, trying to make sure that I was getting everything ramped up. And due to my success on some social media platforms, particularly TikTok, I went into launch day with 21,500 wish lists, which was well over double, potentially triple what I needed in order to land on new and trending. And looking at SteamDB, I was able to estimate that I should have been on the new and trending page for about 4 days, if not 5, depending on how the other titles did. So I launched. And a couple hours later, EA shadow dropped 11 titles, all which, of course, popular enough to get on new and trending. And new and trending is ordered by release time, unless you have some, absurd spike that further gives you advantage. So my game got immediately bumped off the front page, and like I said, I had been looking at all of the forecasts, all the games with announced release dates. So this came completely out of the blue. It was not previously announced. Nobody knew ahead of time. And I had no way to avoid it. And so I was seeing about 30% of the predicted sales that all of my forecasts, even conservative forecasts, had shown. And, the next day, like officially International Women's Day in my time zone, I was absolutely devastated. I like this project. Like, I never expected this to be a profitable project.
Yeah.
Like, I was hoping to hit like net neutral on it, break even. But I also wanted people to play it and see it.
Yeah.
And I had done months of prep for marketing. I had done years of development. And then for this like completely unexpected thing to come up and just like completely destroy my launch date, which you only get one of. Like there was nothing else I could have done. I was crushed. And so I've been sharing my whole story this whole time, as you've seen. So I went online and shared my story, and I went on TikTok and I shared the situation from the perspective of, what sucks about being an indie game developer. You can work for 10 years on a project, and then EA can announce a launch 11 games and destroy all of your marketing and preparation. And then I ended that TikTok with, so happy International Women's Day. And that was an interesting, I didn't think anything of the TikTok, honestly. I didn't think anything of it. I posted it. I sort of like, saw some initial support come in, and initially went to people who'd engaged with my previous stuff. I had a previous TikTok that had reached like 1.5 million or 2 million people. And so there was a lot of people who were like, oh, like that sucks. Like, hey, I wish the best for you. Like, man, being indie is hard. And it got so much engagement that the way that TikTok's algorithms goes, it goes further. And it was seeing, engagement in the like cozy community and indie game fan community. And then it went further and it found some people who were really angry. And angry engagement is still engagement.
Yes.
So it was like, wow, there is a subsect of men here who are getting real mad about the whole International Women's Day comment. Let's make sure all of them see your TikTok.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Thanks, TikTok.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so it went super viral, and it went super toxic. So it started out being really supportive and heartwarming, and then it went like, kill yourself, I hope you die, your game sucks, like this is ugly, nobody would buy it, thanks for letting me know Call of Duty's or Command and Conquer's out. I'm just fine, like happy to let people know, do some marketing for EA, I don't mind that. But I ended up having people join my Discord server and spam pornographic images, gross pornographic images. I had people being super toxic on my Steam community forums. I had people telling me they were going to, and then buying the game, hitting the minimum playtime for review, leaving a review criticizing me for emotionally manipulating people for being upset, and then refunding the game.
Oh.
So like review bombing.
Yes.
Not very effective, thankfully.
Yeah,
but
if they make that wall hard to get over, but those dedicated trolls out there will climb it.
yeah, no, and there's a couple dozen of those reviews, or at least a dozen of those reviews. So it turned into an absolute fest, and I was still trying to like hotfix and patch and manage development, and I was getting quite literally thousands of negative comments and hundreds of like really mean messages. And like, I know I'm saying really mean, but they are like, like really like wishing me harm, threatening me, like saying really gross stuff. And then there's like normal mean where they're just like, saying negative things about my game.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of like weird breakdowns where people are like, oh, she didn't develop anything, she just hired other people to. And I'm like, I have 4,500 commits on this project, I'm pretty sure that I did some development, actually, like most of the development. But
so do you view that whole TikTok episode purely as a net negative at this point, or do you see, did anything positive come out of it? Or was
it worked. I mean, it worked as engagement. It worked as marketing. For all the negative people it was hitting, it was also hitting a lot of people who decided they wanted to be supportive.
Yeah.
So my ultimate result is my sales are about 40% higher than what I predicted now.
Oh.
So
40 then before you launched, or before the negative 30% of your conservative estimates?
So if my prediction was 100%, I originally was performing at 30%, and now I'm performing at 140%.
Congrats.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean,
thank you.
It's a scary day, the day that you become the main character of the internet, but it seems like you soldiered through it and came out the other side stronger.
I have hate stalkers now, though.
Yeah.
Like, I can't post.
Still?
Yeah. I was like 2 weeks ago, I decided, like, I took a break from social media because it was really affecting my mental health. And I was just like, I posted 3 videos that were all purely game dev educational content. No mention of my game, just 100% educational content, and like dozens and dozens of like hateful comments. I tried moderating them initially, and then I gave up because it's not worth the mental tax.
Yeah.
So do you read your comments now, or do you
not now
patch delete? Okay. I think that's wise.
Yeah. I mean, I know everyone says don't read the comments. I feel bad because like there are supportive comments and I want to like engage with fans, but I don't have a community manager, right? So like I'm dealing with this all personally, and like even recognizing that a lot of this negative feedback is coming from, not necessarily criticism towards the game. Like it is people who feel jaded, who are having problems in their life. A lot of them probably need a hug and a therapist, honestly. Like, and like, I can understand that. But even trying to be a good stoic about it is extremely difficult because it just wears on you. And like I said, I mean, I have like over 12,000 comments on that TikTok. And I would easily guess at least 6,000 of them are really shitty. So, that's just too much toxicity for one to wade through unscathed.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to have to handle. And do you see yourself remaining active on TikTok, or do you think you're gonna ramp it down?
I have been taking breaks. I haven't posted again for about 2 weeks. I'm going to try again. My initial recent posts I thought were not going to get like too much engagement. They got like 3,000, 4,000 views, which is around normal. I checked them yesterday and they're up to like 40,000, 40,000. I'm like, okay, I guess this is just how it's going to go now. Yeah, everybody likes stitching my TikToks and trying to make their own comments on it. Hop on the hype train, I guess. I want to continue creating educational content and inspiring content for people, particularly people who see themselves in my story or who are looking for like more information about my journey. So I will continue creating content, but I have to prioritize my mental health. So that's like, it's as much as I can manage at any given time, which is what I'll be handling.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like you have a lot of work ahead of you. So the main thing that we would love to wrap up with after that wonderful and infuriating tale is what is the next plan for you and for Potions: A Curious Tale? Do you have more content coming out the pipeline? Are you planning a sequel to this game?
So my plan was to do 2 like content patches, initial content patches. I just came out with one of those on Saturday. Okay. The next one will take longer. It's going to have more UI content updates, more art asset updates, but not content in terms of like quests and such. It's just going to be content polished, I guess, and then like features.
Nice.
And then I have all my dev kits. So I'm going to start working on porting to consoles. And with the console work, I'm going to put in some end game, like free content. Not quite DLC. It's not going to be in a separate patch or anything. Well, it's going to be in a patch, but not like a separate downloadable, executable or anything.
Okay.
So when the console versions come out, I'll release an update for Steam, and that will be within consoles that will have more endgame content for everyone too. And then after that, I think I'll probably work on a different IP for a bit.
Okay.
Nice.
Just curious about that IP. Is there any, I mean, just a little preview, is there any sort of mechanics that you've been like, brewing up that you want to play with?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you mentioned Yakuza. I want to do a bunch of party games.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of those based on my own experiences in Japan. So some of them are going to be based on like some of the Yakuza mini games, as well as some other party games, Pokemon Stadium, Mario Party, etc. that I find interesting and fun.
I mean, that sounds like a game I will definitely be signing up for. I love party games. I'm the person who plays Mario Party and like wants everybody else to play Mario Party, and they're like, no. I'm like, let's go for 100 rounds. No.
Yeah, my goal is to make it a little bit more snappy than Mario Party.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. There's a little bit too much lag time there. Well, I mean, I'm really looking forward to your next game. I'm looking forward to playing more of Potions: A Curious Tale, your current game, and I think that it's just a bright, wonderful world that you're creating. I can't wait to see the next one that you create. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Danny for a little something extra. Danny, do you want to tell her about the lightning round?
Yeah, we do. We've got a lightning round here for you. It's called 8 to Rate. This one doesn't involve writing anything. These are just going to be simple, underrated, overrated. I'm going to name something. You'll tell us if it's underrated or overrated, and then like a brief explanation for why. Okay? You ready to jump in? All right. Number 1, trusting your intuition.
Overrated in business, underrated in personal safety.
Okay. Good. I like it. Number 2, playing the long game. Executing a plan over a long period of time.
Overrated.
Overrated?
I think it's overrated because it is very hard to make a long-term plan which is flexible enough to deal with the realities of life. It's like a good exercise to go through, but it should not be something that you expect to actually follow.
Awesome. Number 3, running a gaming studio.
Overrated. It's a lot of stress. I don't think a lot of people understand the true impact of doing all the business side of things. Like, people are like, I want to make a game. That's great. You should make a game. I want to run a game studio. That is a very different thing from making a game.
Yeah.
Extremely
and
different.
especially the larger studios get. Like, if you have a studio that is 10 people or more, you're not making a game. You are running a studio. The other people are making the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, what I'm going to call the witchy renaissance. This
Underrated.
Reemergence of-
More
There you go.
witches. Yeah, absolutely. I participated in a Steam sale called Witchy Wonder Women, which also went on last month, and it noted that witches are a characterization of female empowerment, and often were used as prosecution of empowered women as well. So I think that witches are wonderful theming, and something that I hope society embraces, because I think that they can be very good self-empowering heroes and examples for girls.
I love it. All right. Number 5, turn 1 soul ring.
Oh, yeah. Perfectly rated? Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. The original 151 Pokemon.
Underrated. They're the best. I want to be.
Oh, yeah. You missed it. At one point, Joel parodied that song as his intro and sang it to our unexpected guest, and it was something.
That's awesome.
Shonen anime.
Shonen.
Yeah, like
Overrated.
like
Really overrated. I think that so many of them completely lack nuance and follow the same pattern of quick hero's tale, and then the stronger guys, and then the stronger bad guys, and then the stronger bad guys who are actually behind the scenes, and then ultimate power for everybody. It becomes this unnecessary power ramp race of poor storytelling, in my opinion. Shoujo, underrated.
Nice. I like it. All right, last one. Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Well rated.
Okay, properly rated.
I think that it is a wonderful first experience of Zelda in an open world context. I think they did a really, really good job. Their level design was great. The puzzles, they made it very compelling. I think that it is appropriately rated as a really good game. Not perfect, but I think it's done a really good job.
Awesome, you did it.
I did
That was
it.
the lightning round, 8-8. Joel,
Yeah.
handing it back to you, my friend.
Yeah. Well, Denny, that was such a wonderful long saga of a tale. What was the key takeaway? Did you have a key takeaway from the story that we just heard?
Yeah, no, I think I really liked, and it really resonated with me, this whole idea of establishing a North Star for yourself as you're setting out. I think oftentimes, we've seen this with a lot of other game designers that we've come into contact with. If you don't have a defined vision and you don't set some things for you to sort of cross-check your progress against and say, hey, is this really the thing that I'm trying to put into the world? It's easy to end up directionless and wandering and not really making any progress. And I think starting at the beginning of your process and really distilling down what it is that you're trying to bring into the world is incredibly powerful. And I really appreciate Renee sharing that with us. And I think also just perseverance. I mean, there were just so many times where I feel like it's easy to feel knocked down or discouraged. You mentioned going to PAX and kind of getting a lukewarm reception and then finding your audience and just, shortly thereafter and it being a completely different world. But so many people could be easily discouraged after PAX. So I think it's very much a message of, distill your vision, focus on your vision and persevere. Those are my major takeaways from today's conversation.
Excellent, Danny. And I am going to ask you at home to persevere by taking your phone out of your pocket or opening up the browser window that this video is playing in, and you can persevere and hit, give us a North Star of guidance by liking this video. So why don't you go ahead and hit that like button? It gives you the confetti, the big colorful explosion. It's very much like the colors that you would see in Potions: A Curious Tale. But if you could do us the favor, just go ahead and keep persevering and go over to that subscribe button, and why don't you hit that really fast? Thank you so much. And just one more thing. Just one more thing. You're just persevering so hard that we appreciate your perseverance in this preserving times. And why don't you hit that bell icon, ring a ding ding. You're going to get our podcast when it's hot and fresh on the YouTube algorithm. But not everybody here watches their podcast on YouTube. We do understand that. We know that there's some people who just like audio podcasts, and we have this podcast available for you on all audio platforms. So if you have somebody in your life who doesn't like using their eyes, but loves using their ears, why don't you tell them to look us up? We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. That's the Megamoth Studios super secret podcast. And you can go out there and get the secret out, because our show, it's just wonderful. It's just cozy. It's a great old time. So if you could do those things for us, like, subscribe, and review, well then, we'll be in love with you. All right, Danny, do you have a little something random for us to see the show out on?
Yep. We're going to end here on a fun note. I have a quiz prepared. This is a potion-themed quiz. So I believe you have some writing utensils and perhaps something to write on. And so how this is going to work is I've got 5 different recipes for you. I'm going to read the ingredients, and you are going to guess what the potion is. Okay? You'll each write down your answers. We'll have Renee show us her answer first, and then we'll see what Joel puts down, and we will see who gets closer. We're going to start easy and get weirder as we go along. So let's get started. So here's your first potion. The ingredients are honey, water, yeast, and nutrients for the yeast. Those are the ingredients. Again, that's honey, water, yeast, and the nutrients for the yeast. Now, this doesn't speak to any processes that may occur after you combine these ingredients. Sometimes potion making is more complicated. All right. We're locking in our answers and waiting for Joel.
I have, and I'll crush that out. Go ahead.
The anticipation is good. All right, Renee, what do you got? Mead. All right, Renee's got mead. What do you got, Joel?
Okay, well, I first put honeycomb. Like, that sounded like we should need to create a whole honeycomb, but then I thought, no, it sounds like an anti-allergy, kind of remedy.
That is incorrect, Joel. That is unfortunately incorrect, or fortunately, depending on who you're rooting for. And I'm always rooting for the guest in these situations. Yeah. Renee is correct. So it is mead. That's 1 point in Renee's column. Here we go. Number 2.
All right.
You guys ready? Tea, usually black tea, sugar, something that we call a SCOBY, which stands for a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, a starter tea, and some water. What is this potion we're trying to brew? I'll read the ingredients one more time. Tea, sugar, a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, starter tea, and water. Locking in our answers. All right, Renee, what do you got? Kombucha. There we go. And what do you have, Joel?
I have a feeling I would do very bad on this. Come on, let's root for the home team. I got probiotic.
Kombucha is a probiotic.
Yeah, we could give Joel points, but we won't. So it is 2-0. Doing really, really well. You might lock this. All right, here we go. Number 3. It's going to start getting harder here. Warm milk, honey or maple syrup, a pinch of ground nutmeg, a pinch of ground cinnamon, a pinch of ground turmeric, ashwagandha powder, that's optional, and also optional for garnish. You could top it with some dried lavender or rose petals. I'll read it again. Warm milk. We're going to start with a base of warm milk. To that, we're going to add honey or maple syrup. We're going to add a pinch of nutmeg, a pinch of cinnamon, and a pinch of turmeric. We could add ashwagandha powder. And if we wanted to, we could top it with dried lavender or rose petals. I'm going to let you lock in your answers. This one is a very witchy beverage.
Okay, I'm not going to get it.
Finally found a category, Joel, that you know very little about.
Yeah, I guess so. I need to add a potion brewing podcast to my routine. All right.
All right.
I don't have it. I just I'm wrong.
Oh, cool.
Okay, what do you got though? Let's
I
see.
originally started with flan, which is not a potion,
okay.
and then I was like golden milk, but golden milk has turmeric in it, not the other ones. It sounds like the warm milk that my parents gave me before bed, but there wasn't a word for that. I don't
Yeah.
have a term
Yeah, you
for
know
it.
what? I think it is golden milk. It's called moon milk, but I think that those are the same thing.
Golden milk is turmeric, unfortunately.
Well, there's turmeric in this recipe.
Oh, there was? Mm-hmm. Oh, it might be golden milk then. Or golden latte.
I think we can count that. I think we
Danny's,
can count that. Joel, what do you
Danny's
have?
biases are coming
Baby
through right
formula?
now. I said baby formula.
I'm going to go no on that
Yeah.
one, Joel.
The
Okay.
rose petals
All
for
right.
the baby. I like that.
All right, here we go. Last two. This one is different. I don't know if either of you will get it. We're going to start with fresh purple corn. We're going to add pineapple peel. We're going to add a cinnamon stick, cloves, lime juice, and sugar. Again, that's fresh purple corn, pineapple peel, cinnamon stick, cloves, lime juice, and sugar.
You know, a lot of these sound like concoctions I would make at the bar when I was working there, except for they don't include the alcohol.
I said corny pina colada because I knew I was.
I feel like that's a fairly accurate description. What do you got, Joel?
I said a virgin hot toddy.
That could not be farther from the. So this one is actually called chicha morada, and it is a traditional Peruvian beverage. But it felt very potion-y to me. I just liked the fresh purple corn and the pineapple peel, and I'm like, those are ingredients that belong in a potion, so we're going to go for it. All right, you ready for the last one? This is definitely the most unhinged on the list.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. Let's go.
All right.
Okay, here we go. So we're going to start with rice wine, goji berries, ginseng, and a venomous snake that has been properly fasted.
Wait, the snake is like you just put the entire snake in the concoction? Is it like...
Yeah, yeah, but it has to be properly fasted and preferably venomous.
Oh, my goodness. Is that what opium was?
Yes, that's what the Opium Wars were fought over.
Yeah.
But of all the things you've said so far, this actually does sound like the first legitimate magical potion.
Yes, I think it's supposed to help with vitality. Certainly the only Eastern medicine we have here. We're going to lock in our answers. For those at home, I'm going to go ahead and read this to you one more time. We're talking rice wine. We're talking goji berries. We're talking ginseng. And we are talking a venomous snake that has been properly fasted. It's important that the snake has been properly fasted because you do not want any contents in its tummy. All right. Renee, do you have an answer to share?
I started with snake sake and then went soju and then went baijiu. But then you said rice wine, so sake would be the closest of those. But I don't think that's right. They do have a snake like baijiu-esque things in Okinawa, but I don't think they have goji berries in it.
Okay. Well, goji berries are definitely an optional ingredient. Joel, what do you got?
I just said ayahuasca.
Okay. No, it's actually shoju. I think that we can accept that answer. This
Soju
is the recipe that I was
has
given. So
I
Renee.
don't believe that.
It's a snake version.
Yes.
Because I was close. I basically did the Japanese one, the Korean one, and then the Chinese one. It's like it's one of
think
these
you got it.
cultures.
Yeah, no, you got it. I mean, I have it down as shiju or snake wine. I think that your answer perfectly captures that. I think you have a 4 out of 5. I think that you crushed Joel. I think Joel had a 0 out of 5. That is phenomenal.
Those are really hard.
Yeah,
When
that's-
with the meat and the kombucha, I was like, all right, I think I'm jiving. And then after that, I was like, oh no.
So for winning the round, all of the people who've been leaving you hateful comments on the internet will now leave Joel hateful comments on the internet, and you will be absolved of the misery.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. He deserves
Yeah,
it.
and trust me, I have enough shame in my life to think that whatever they say is probably true. All right, Danny, that was
well, that's
the
it.
hardest something random I think I've ever gone through, and the most humbling something random. Like, there's definitely still space in my life to learn more. So, Renee, we're getting out of here. I always like to ask the guests, Renee, where do you want to be found on the internet?
I keep a pretty public persona, so I can be found anywhere you can find me, except for don't add me on Facebook. That one's for personal friends. But you can find me on YouTube and LinkedIn under Renee Gittins, and you can find me on all other social medias under RikuKat, RAKUKAT.
Nice, awesome. And Danny, does Moth Studios have anything to announce today?
We do. We have an announcement. We will be doing our live show at Comicpalooza in the Podcast Pavilion on Friday, May 24th at 5 p.m. So you can come find us in the Podcast Pavilion at 5 p.m. on May 24th. And we will be doing a live show that focuses on storytelling and game design.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun one, folks. Please come out and support. We're going to need some homers in the audience to, give us laughs and to encourage us onward.
Or boo at us. I'm okay with that too.
Danny does love the hate. I don't know if my heart could take it, but if that's what you're inspired to do, that's what you're inspired to do.
Bring your tomatoes.
Yes, I'll take it all. All right.
There you go.
Well, that is it for the Moth Studios Super Secret Podcast. I would love to thank our guest, Renee, and my co-host, Danny. And I have been Joel, reminding you that you must start somewhere, so why not here? Thanks for listening. Theme music by James Hilden, produced and edited by William Wymore.
Who's up for some snake wine?
That sounds good right now. I am hungry.